Hey everybody, so today we're going to go over the hooks and the uppercuts. Now if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the channel. Some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in this video today are from previous lessons that we talked about in other videos. So if you get lost along the way, that's okay. I suggest you go back to those videos and review that material, then come back here. I'm going to go ahead and put the links in the description here. Now if you haven't already, go check us out on Facebook. We have a Combative Concepts Martial Arts group page there. It's a perfect place to come and ask questions, share videos, and stay up to date on new happenings. Without further ado, we're going to get into how to perform the hooks and the uppercuts. Now, again, I want to point out, just like I pointed out on the jab and cross video, this is the body mechanics, the theory, the how to throw these punches. It is not the application. We are going to get into that very shortly in another video, but for now, I just want you to use this and get the body mechanics down, get used to punching. Okay, so just like everything else, we're going to start from the stance. If you don't know the details on the stance, don't worry. We did a video on that. The link is in the description. So from our stance, right, let's start with the lead hand, right? That's our lead hook. Now, a hook is a close range attack. Okay, so we talked about distance previously, so it's very important to have the proper distance and control the distance. And we'll get deeper into that concept again when we start talking about the application. But the hook is a shorter range attack, just like the uppercut, right? It's a different distance than, say, my straight punches, okay? So when we throw this punch, remember, everything starts from our hips. In practice, as we're learning the body mechanics of it, the way I teach my students, want you to get used to loading your hip up first, okay? So this is, I would say, this is like a level 1 type of hook here. So we load our hips up. And remember, our shoulder should be connected to our hip. So when I rotate my hip, that winds up my shoulder, which winds up my hook, right? Another way that it was explained to me when I was learning it, you point your right knee at your left knee, right? Everyone remember this pivot drill that we did on a previous lesson, right? So same thing, same concept. 1. So this is loaded up. 1. Now when I unwind, see, I'm unwinding, I'm throwing it with my body, with my core. My elbow comes level with my shoulder. My elbow has to stay bent. This is what creates the hook. You hook across by turning your body and you're right back to your stance. Okay? One more time. So I load it up. As I unwind, my elbow level with my shoulder, hooks around. This is as far as I want to go. You see where my elbow is bent here? I don't need to come way over here and cross all the way past center line. Now this is over swinging and I'm open here. This is as far as I go. I stop just barely on or past center line and then come right back. The fist starts, the punch starts where my fist is. Okay, so a couple things that happen here when people are learning it, or even some more advanced folks, I see it still sometimes. They turn their shoulders, number 1. See how my hips are locked into place? And the shoulders turns. This creates too much momentum, and I'm not strong here. This is no good. You need to load up with your hips. Okay, you're going to have a lot more speed and a lot more pop off of that. The other thing is people will pull this back. Now, the punch is being telegraphed, right? You're basically saying to your opponent, here it comes, here it comes. And then you got this big old opening right here. Again, we don't want that. We want to stay tight. Come in off of that, okay? Another thing that I see is when people throw this hook, they push out, right? Trying to develop power and strength. Well, when this happens, look at the angle here. This is no longer a hook. I don't know what this is. It's not a hook, it's not a jab, it's nothing. So if you have a tendency to do that and you're finding yourself pushing out, what I recommend that you try is when you're practicing this, think about kind of knocking on your chest, right? So when it comes in, I bring my fist back to my chest. This will help develop keeping that hook form and that hook structure. And over time, it just comes naturally. Okay, now the other thing, and this is always a big question, well, how should I have my hand? Horizontal, right? Palm down, or should the palm facing you? I say it really depends on what feels normal to you. There's no, in my opinion, there's no right or wrong way from palm down to facing. Now what I will say though is palm down, you get a little snap in at the end, right? A little rotation at the end. The other part, it kind of depends on your targeting and the situation, right? So if you're aiming for like a jawline area, right? I think a horizontal is a good spot for it because it catches more of that jaw, right? But what if you're aiming for like the back of the jaw and the hinges, right? And more of a street application. Well, then a vertical fist is gonna be very nice for that because then all your knuckles are gonna come to the back of the jaw. So it really depends on what's comfortable for you. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, right? A hook is a hook in this situation. When we talk about throwing the hook to the body, there's a couple different variations when we get into this subject, right? You'll see some people, they talk about a shovel hook, right? And this is kind of a hook in between an uppercut, right? If an uppercut is vertical and a hook is horizontal, now we're coming in between. And this is a great shot. I love this because it gets up under the ribs. It's coming up under the ribs here and coming out high, right? That's what most people refer to as a shovel hook. So that's one option. The other option is coming straight across, right? With a horizontal hook, and that just blasts right through the body. Both are great. Now, when you're throwing this, what happens is guys will, let me stand this way, people will bend their back to get low, right? And I think we might have talked about this in a previous lesson. Now my head is over my feet. This is very bad for movement, very, very bad for balance. I don't want this. I have no options here but to come back over my feet, and then I have to move. And if I have a savvy opponent who's always on balance and moving around, the minute I go here, I'm a step behind. I don't want this. So when we go to the body, bend your knees, right? I want to go low, I bend. See, I'm balanced, but I'm changing levels. Now I can go to the body, right? Because I might go low and I might have to move at that time and come back with something else. So quick recap, okay? When we throw that hook, shoulder connected to the hip, rotate, elbow level with the shoulder, keep that hook form on the hand. Other hand is here at home, elbow down, pivoting, throwing with my core, elbow barely crosses center line, if that. Comes back, and then everything's the same on the rear, right? So, like I said, when you're learning it, we load it up. One, right? So that's cocking my rear hip back. Unwind, pivot. That's to the head, to the body. Drop levels. One, I like to drop my level and rotate my hip at the same time. 1, 2. See that? 1, 2, to the body. You have your shovel. All right, so next thing we're going to discuss is our uppercuts. And they're very similar to the hooks. Very similar in the sense that we're loading up those hips and coming up, okay, as we unwind. Now, this one, I'd say the application of this is, I'd say, a little bit more different than the theory of it in practice versus combat, right? What do I mean by that? When we learn this, when I teach my students this, again, what we're trying to develop in all of these punches is using our hips, okay? And one thing I'll say, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far, but one thing I'll say is when you're first learning this, it could be challenging to develop power from your core, from your hips in an efficient manner, to just barely move and pop, okay? And that's what you need in a combative situation. You don't want to generate too much motion. You got to be able to pop it right away. But in order to develop that, we got to go through these gross movements, these larger movements to get used to activating it. Okay, and the reason I'm saying this is when we practice and we learn the uppercut, I load it up. I want to load my hip up nice, get used to turning my hip, see how my hands stay in close. And as I unwind, I come up under, see my hip is pushing this elbow up. My uppercut comes up, and this goes typically under the chin, okay? Sometimes, again, learning it, practicing it, getting comfortable with it, think about coming over the shoulder, right? So one of the things I see is when people throw this uppercut, right, they want to push through. We're losing the form and the strength here. This is not good. So just like with the hook, what we were talking about, I teach my students, get used to just kind of reaching over the shoulder. That way your elbow stays bent. And if you can start to develop this motion, coming up under here and keeping it bent is a lot easier, okay? And what we're doing, we're trying to break this. I have no strength up here. My body is away from my punch. I got to keep my body up under my punch for it to be strong, okay? So when we throw this, loads up your hip, unwind, uppercut straight up, over your shoulder. Look how high my elbow goes. This is about as high as I want it. Boom. Again, combatively, and I'm not going to go too far into this because that's not the topic of the subject, but I'm going to keep it tight. See that? See how much shorter it is? 1, 2, up. Okay? And we're going to get there. Same thing with the rear. Load it up, under, hip drives the elbow. 1, 2. That's our uppercut. So there's a couple things that you could do to practice this, right? We want to practice this in movement. Just like with the other punches we went through, we're going to go from our stance and just get used to moving around and punching it, right? So I could push shuffle forward and throw my hook, right? Back, hook, left, hook, right, hook. And then you just go down the line with everything else. Forward, rear hook, back, rear hook, left, rear, right, rear, and then uppercuts, right? Go down each one. Get used to moving around with each punch. Okay? Get comfortable with your body. Once you get that, start mixing them up. I can go forward. I could go hook, uppercut, back, uppercut, hook. Right? You get the idea. The whole concept is to just get used to moving your body in that manner. Get used to holding that stance, moving that stance, and attacking from that stance in a balanced manner. Remember, when you move, if I move my front foot 3 inches forward, my back foot has to come with it 3 inches as well. So when I move, I'm always coming back to my stance. And now we're combining these things, controlling our body, combining movement with using my hips and keeping my form, okay? We went through the jabs and crosses, so after you do that with the hooks and uppercuts, start putting the jabs and crosses together, right? And now you start doing what we call shadow boxing, okay? Which is something we're gonna get deeper into in another lesson. But for now, just get used to moving and punching. See you next time.